So we've had what seems like a long life. Not that long, but it seems like we've been together for years. Somebody said to me a few years ago, I really like NIED, and I'd really like to come to work for you. And I said, you know what? We will let you come to work for us. We'll give you a job free of charge. You can work just as much. So we've been living on a lot of hot air and love, motivation, determination. This has been an act of love for those of us that are on the steering committee, and particularly Len and Wendy, we owe our lives to in terms of giving us something to do over the last 4 years. Come up. Wendy Prescott is the founder of NIED, and she's going to do a little blurb that she usually does at the beginning. And then, if we don't have any other business, I'm going to talk briefly about some of my theories, about aha moments and turning points in therapy, and actually what recovery looks like. And then we have the experts here. We have 4 very wise, very knowledgeable, very strong, healthy women here who have been to hell and back. And they have some wisdom to share with us. And so we have some questions. You have a copy of the questions on the back. There's just a couple of references that we might talk about later. We want this to be very interactive, so the girls on the stage here will interact with each other, but they'd also like to interact with you. We've done it before at one of the other symposiums, and it really went well. So just feel free to speak up when we start the questions and start talking. And if you've got something to say, raise your hand and say it. Okay? Thank you.
So first of all, I just want to thank all these wonderful ladies for being with us.
Women
for being with us and for really putting your hearts out there to everybody. And Patsy, thank you always. And the rest of my team as well. Without everybody on this team, NIED would not be where we are today. So my wonderful hubby, Lynn Koss, Stephanie's over there, Marlene's over there, Sandy's an amazing volunteer for us as well. And
Lynn Koss is sitting right in front of you.
Yeah.
Lindy.
Oh. Okay. And the ones that are not here, really, each and every day, I just thank each and every one of them, because we all have strengths and weaknesses and can do things and can't do things, and just together, it's been the most incredible journey.
If I can interrupt for just 1 minute, one of our steering committee members is Carly Crawford, who's out in the Halton, Burlington, Hamilton. We have 2 people on our panel tonight that we're going to lose. And we're going to lose them actually to Carly because they're both in Hamilton. And they're very interested in being involved. So I think that really speaks to the love and compassion and passion of being involved and helping with eating disorders.
Anything else, Chrissy?
No. I will shut up now.
You don't have to. So I'm going to just read to you what I read at every member of parliament that we meet, and also at every member of the provincial party that we meet. Just to give you a background and everybody else a background who we did have a meeting with as to why and where we are and why I started NIED. NIED was launched in 2012, and I'm totally in awe and overwhelmed by where we are today. I am here today to speak on behalf of hundreds and thousands of moms and dads, caregivers and families just like ours. As parents of a 31-year-old who has been suffering with anorexia and bulimia for more than half her life, Len and I have done everything possible, emotionally, physically and financially, to provide and help our daughter Amy, and it is never enough. For over 16 years, we have lived with fear, stress, heartache, broken relationships, broken hearts, attempted suicides, self-harm, shoplifting, worry, panic, helplessness, and sometimes hope. We have been through every negative and positive emotion possible. We never, ever have peace of mind. Our experiences of helplessness, frustration, and ultimately anger fueled me to want to create awareness and take action regarding the bizarre and unforgiving world of eating disorders. The pain for sufferers and their families is insurmountable. The stress and strain on families is extreme, horrendous, and devastating. Eating disorders bankrupt families, destroy relationships, and kill sufferers. They have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness. Like so many other parents and caregivers in this country and province, I have been running a 24/7 do-it-yourself treatment center for Amy. There is no affordable, warm, fuzzy place of healing for her to be in or go to other than our home and family support. In recognition of the gaps in current healthcare services, delays in treatment, lack of funding, inadequate information, and education, all levels of government, healthcare professionals, schools, and the public, NIED's ultimate goal is to implement immediate action and change. NIED is committed to ensure that eating disorders are acknowledged and included in mental health discussions and policies, mental health organizations, programs, decisions, campaigns, and agendas. We advocate to gain the same respect, support, treatment, funding, research, and parity as any other physical and mental illness in Ontario and in Canada. I think it is important that we all understand the harsh and brutal reality of eating disorders from a sufferer's point of view. So I will read a piece Amy wrote that vividly depicts about her life, 17 years into the illness, on ODSP, and with virtually no life, incomplete education, and compromised social skills. A life of isolation and 100% dependent on my husband and I. It's called My Eating Disorder Is Not. It's not a diet, nor a lifestyle, nor a senseless teenage phase. It's not stupid, it's not silly, nor the latest weight loss craze. It's not a passion, not a hobby, and it is not some twisted game. It's fatal, yes, it's deadly, it's an illness of the brain. It's not fun, and it's not funny, not intentional, not a choice. It kills you slowly every day and overtakes your voice. It's not my fault, it's not intentional, not some spiteful sleight of hand. It's an anxiety-driven, fear-based disease that too few understand. It's not a joke and it's not selfish, it is the furthest thing from vain. It's a drastic telltale of no self-esteem and unparalleled burning shame. It's not malicious, nor dismissive, nor distinct to middle-class white girls. It's a disease like any other, ensnaring every age, class, and race around the world. It's not uncommon, it's not weird, it dates back centuries, nothing new. It's the single most fatal mental illness, which all statistics prove to be true. Telling an anorexic to just eat is like expecting a deaf person to just talk. Telling a binge eater to just stop is like demanding a paraplegic to just walk. Telling a bulimic to just eat normally is cruel, ignorant, and frustrating. Telling an exercise addict to just sit down is like telling schizophrenics just stop hallucinating. This illness is biological and genetic. It's like cancer of mind and thought. It doesn't come from nowhere. You are either born susceptible or not. If you think this is a ridiculous phase or that we'd be fine if we just tried, then explain to me the shocking rate of sufferers committing suicide. If eating disorders were just a stupid choice, or you think that we're just lying, then why are millions desperate for help while millions more are dying? It's a hard one. But on that, and I really want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. It does feel so good. You sitting in front. Because Amy is terrible. And to know that you girls have done what you've done and pulled through. Really. I take care of it. And your parents.
wonderful, strong experts up here, women. This is Kelsey, sitting to my left, Pava, Sam, and Sonia. And they will tell their stories. We'll respond to the questions that we have posed here, and we're just going to open it up for discussion. I'm a clinical nurse specialist and a nurse psychotherapist. I've been treating eating disorders for 35 plus years. I've been in the trenches. I do it because I love it. It's a passion of my life. And as we know, there are many other people that are passionate, that are experts, and that are also working in the field. And that's both our Wendy and Len and the committee. It's all the experts that we have. It's all the doctors, the caregivers, the people who help caregivers out. And that's one of our things that we're concerned about is how to give care to the caregivers. I digress. That'll be another symposium. So tonight's symposium, and I'm going to try to keep a close eye on my time because I can ramble. Tonight's symposium is about aha moments or turning points in therapy. We know in terms of this recovery thing that there are a lot of stories about people who relapse. There's also some wonderful stories of people who are identified, whose parents recognize there's an eating disorder, they are diagnosed, they immediately go into treatment, they go in, they come out, and they never look back, and they're perfect. That's actually a very, very small percentage of people. It happens, and it's wonderful when it does. And we also have some what's called family-based therapy, FBT, and it works very, very well with very young teenagers who've just been diagnosed and who have immediate intervention. Research findings indicate the earlier the onset, the earlier the intervention, the better the prognosis. People who've had eating disorders for a long time. I have a few theories on this. One of my theories is I don't think that's the way most people recover. I do very long-term therapy, and I think that people go a circuitous route. They lean forward, they slide back, they lean forward, they slide back. And over my years of therapy, of work, and with NIED, we certainly have met some people who've had rather torturous journeys, and yet they are healthy, they are good, they are wonderful, they are strong, they're out living their life. I'm coming to believe that that may be more common. It might even be the more better way to do it. Now, certainly anybody that's lived through it, when your daughter is relapsing and you're heading into the hospital, or she's just had an overdose, or the doctors are throwing up their hands, or you're putting her on the plane to go to the United States, it's like, I'm sure you don't feel that way at all. However, I'll speak to that little part of it. I have a theory on why that happens. But what does recovery really look like? And what does the data show? In fact, what we know is we have these people, we refeed them, we put them in the hospital, and you're supposed to come out and be well, and God bless you, and go on with your life. But that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening at all. In fact, that's a rare story. We have a whole lot of other stories. We don't have many stories about what recovery looks like. We don't, and one of the things that the new buzzword is lived experiences. We actually have never turned to the individuals who've had eating disorders or their caregivers and said, tell us, what did we do right? Tell us, what did we do wrong? Because I know, having been in the field for as long as I have, and I was in it long before we called them eating disorders and long before there was a term for bulimia. We have not done it right at all. We've made a lot of mistakes. And I think that we need to own up to that as clinicians. I think as well, now, 35 years later, we are actually starting to to know what the questions are, but we don't know the answers. 30 years ago, we thought we knew everything. We thought we knew the questions, and we thought we knew the answers as well. And one of my concerns is some of the programs are built on some absolutes. And if you don't conform to that, if you don't go in and do it that way, you're a failure. And it's like everybody's like, why did you do it? Everybody, you know, such a thing. But I don't think that's the normal way. And I think what we have here is a group of women who can tell you what it's really like to learn and grow and struggle with recovery and leap forward and slide back. One of my theories is I really believe that in order to recover from an eating disorder, you have to develop a sense of wisdom about yourself, you have to develop an existential sense of yourself, and you have to know who you are. And eating disorders are occurring younger and younger and younger. We're seeing kids 3 and 5 years old. They've got some growing to do before they're ever going to get to the point of knowing who they are. But these women have grown through a variety of pathways. I think that's one of the other issues. The pathway to recovery is not go find a therapist, go in the hospital, get refed, do some therapy for 2 years, and God bless you, you're finished. Therapy looks very different in many different ways at many different times. We're going to hear that tonight. One of the things we know that we've talked about in NIED is one size does not fit all. So the treatment models that we have at this point, while they're ingenious and creative and I think that they're very much based on this is the way we do it and this is what we know works. I certainly believe that the brain needs to be renourished. And I think with all the movement towards accepting that eating disorders are biological brain diseases, and that as we understand more and more of the brain function, we're seeing more and more and more that you really can't make any kind of decisions unless there's the little brain up there has been renourished. And I think what we're going to see in the stories here is as these women have relapsed or fallen back, their brain was still nourished for them to make some very important decisions. In my reading and putting this together, I was looking at turning points and passages. And one of my readings talked about the fact that a crisis actually doesn't have to be a bad thing. Crisis can be things move together and you're faced with having to make some decisions and change, move, turn a different way. And I think what we're going to see and hear in their stories is there have been turning points all along their recovery pathway. When there have been changes, they've been difficult for you and probably difficult for family members, but they actually have been very vital and important changes. And I think that we need to acknowledge that needs to happen. And that, again, is what tonight is about. So in reality, recovery is not a straight line process. You don't start here and recover there. It's more ups and downs, amazing, exciting, scary as hell leaps forward, and dismal backslides. And having to pick yourself up and brush yourself off, look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, let's do it again. So, I'm finished. I will say up my
Well, hello, I'm the one that they call Kelsey, and in March of 2013, I was 15 years old and just about to start the March break with my friends when I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa restricting subtype. Unfortunately, I had a journey leading up to that point. In fact, there was never really a time in my life, even in early childhood, where I wasn't completely obsessed with my appearance. So whether that was being 4 years old and constantly looking at myself in the mirror, or even in grade 2 when I was already comparing myself to my female classmates based on appearance, to the onset of my actual eating disorder in middle school, I always felt like I had to look a certain way. And when it started happening, it happened so quickly and I didn't exactly know what was happening, but I didn't actually lose a dramatic amount of weight. I maintained the same weight from the end of 6th grade to the middle of 10th grade. And because of that, and because I was still technically eating, I would use that to give the illusion to people that I was okay. In reality, I was far from okay, and even deep down, I knew that. I knew that I shouldn't have been losing hair so easily in the brush. I knew that I shouldn't have felt so cold all the time, and I knew that I shouldn't have felt so tired. But I was far from okay. Every day, my list of rules and regulations around food became longer and longer, and yet my safe food list became shorter and shorter. And at the same time, I would exercise excessively because my disorder would tell me that I was a failure if I didn't. And around grade 9, because of lack of nourishment and not taking care of myself as I should have been, my mood swings were awful and a very frequent occurrence, and it was very difficult for my parents to deal with. But they didn't want their daughter to be the one with the eating disorder. It scared them to say that and to admit that. So when I went to an adolescent clinic in grade 9, actually my parents had set up an appointment for grade 9. It wasn't about an eating disorder explicitly. It was about stress that my parents would attribute to school or family. And because I didn't want this to be real, I just wanted it to go away on its own and just pretend it didn't exist. I convinced my parents to, no, you know what, I don't need to go to this appointment. I'll be fine if I do it on my own and I'll get better by myself. And they did cancel the appointment, but I didn't get better. I actually got much worse. So a few months later, at the beginning of grade 10, my parents knew they had to do something. They still couldn't bring themselves to say that this is an eating disorder, but they were concerned about their little girl, so they booked an appointment again. And this time they weren't backing down. And leading up to it, I just pretended that it wasn't going to happen. I didn't have a problem, and I kept going with my ways. And even the morning of my appointment, I woke up early, I exercised, I had my meticulously planned out breakfast, and I even packed a lunch just in case there wasn't any safe foods available for me around lunchtime. And then I argued with my parents for about 45 minutes saying, no, I'm not going, I'm not sick, I don't want to miss a day of school. But I did anyway, and the appointment was going fairly normal until the end when my blood results came back. And my kidneys were actually so dehydrated that I had an excess of urea in my blood, which is a waste product that your urine creates, which is normally flushed by the kidneys. And this, on top of my weight and other physical signs and symptoms, meant that I was medically unstable and I could not go home that day. So I was put to the inpatient eating disorders ward immediately. I stayed there for 2 weeks, but it wasn't Kelsey in control, it was my eating disorder. And even sitting in a bed for 2 weeks with IVs and a heart monitor on, I couldn't even bring myself to admit that I was ill. I thought this is ridiculous that they're keeping me in this bed and all I want to do is go home and exercise and go back to my old ways. And it was also very difficult for my parents to still admit this. And even once I was discharged, I only went for 2 outpatient appointments at this clinic before I convinced my parents that no, I don't need this, I want to leave this program. So they let me go on the condition that I would seek help somewhere else. I had a single appointment with the psychologist in the adult eating disorders program before I convinced my mom, I don't need anything and I want to do this by myself. And I maintained my weight until the end of the school year, but then summer came and I had more time and I was actually doing more exercise than I was before I was admitted, and I was restricting again and I was losing weight. But I was also going through so much mentally. I was really conflicted inside because while my disorder wanted me to keep going with this routine that I had set for myself, I was starting to come to terms with the fact that I was in the hospital and that I was, in fact, ill. And I just wasn't finding the same level of comfort anymore with my routine. And this is when I started to make a conscious decision that I don't want to live this way the rest of my life. I don't want to be so restricted. I want to live a normal life, So I took baby steps, and it was really hard to get on that. I know in a few-minute blurb it seems like it was instantaneous and like that, but I assure you that it wasn't. And by the end of summer, I was able to drop the extra exercise. I was slowly eating more high-calorie foods, high protein, higher fat, and I was beginning to get on the track of gaining weight again. And what really helped was I actually switched schools halfway through 11th grade, and I didn't know anyone at this new school. So it made it so much easier for me to continue gaining weight and to accept my body, because I wasn't around people anymore who knew me when I was ill, who knew me when I would lie and like say that everything was okay. It was so much easier to accept that I was changing because not having those eyes around me. And I also really got involved in yoga and understanding that my body is capable of so much and it doesn't always matter your appearance. And I'm currently going into my second year of my honors Bachelor of Science at McMaster University. I'm in psychology, neuroscience, and behavior, and I really hope to become a clinician of some sort in the realm of eating disorders. That's my complete dream, because I wouldn't wish this on anyone. And even though I technically did a lot of it outside of treatment, I want to stress that if I wasn't in the hospital, I would have never gotten on that track. It was the hospital that initially put the seed and the idea in my head to finally get on track, and it was an uphill battle, and there were days when I wanted to go back and just give up, and days when I cried and wished that I could be back in that body with snap of fingers. But when I remind myself how much better I feel, how much happier I am, and how much more energized I am, it makes it worth it. It's not easy, and I'm not going to pretend that it is, but you can do it. You're so much more capable of what you even know, and it can get better.
Oh, right on to me. I'm Kavital. Okay, I have to read from this because it's not going to come accurate. Okay. Okay. Recovery is a flexuous journey. Throughout my winding path that was the reclamation of my identity, I gained an awareness that I didn't know existed. I felt I lost my identity when I gave all my power toward my eating disorder. I was ill for many years and always thought that I was trying to recover. I became ill as a child. I didn't really know that I had an eating disorder until a few years after that, as pretty common. I was in denial of knowing that there's a difference between accepting health and treatment and letting it actually have an impact. I always felt like therapy and nutrition treatment wasn't working, so I let it not work. The resistance to the treatment available became a ritual. I feel that it's common for those suffering from an eating disorder to always feel like the outlier, like nothing will apply to them. All of the therapeutic options available were inspired by the Maudsley model approach as a child, which means family-based therapy. Taking away any independence I had left, all of the duties and responsibilities of my intake were put on my family. I was raised as a very independent person, and this approach didn't suit my family dynamic at all. Because in the past this method worked for some, the doctors were under the impression that it was the only way to stop an eating disorder in its tracks, by erasing the factor of option. This treatment method is not one size fits all, and its benefit depends on many variables, such as parenting style, having supportive people in your life, the ferocity of defiance that the person afflicted is actually experiencing, and other contributing factors that show in the numbers of children and youth that continue to suffer despite their participation in this treatment method. I continue to lie to myself and my loved ones that the Maudsley model 12-month day hospital treatment was working, a few years into it, even though every day I was still longing for that discharge. For me, it was that I thought I would be able to maintain a certain level of my illness, letting go of some behaviors, but holding on to the ones I felt I could not live without. My eating disorder wasn't based on body image at all, isn't, I guess. It was more based on fixation and having control over my life. It kind of counters the stereotype that many people do suffer with body image problems with eating disorders, but many don't. And I don't think that comes into light at all because a lot of the messages pushed and things like that are about body image when there's so much more to it, and it's not this superficial concept of if you can be okay with what you look like, then you have to be okay. That's your eating disorder. None of that applied to me at all, which was what was kind of pushed down my throat. I always felt that going back to my symptoms was an option. Nothing scared me, so I wasn't having any realizations or awareness of consequences for many years. I picture my eating disorder as a negative number. If 0 is stable, then the higher the negative number, I would be digging myself deeper into the ground. About 4 or 5 years into my illness, I was so deep into that hole that I lost sight of the world existing above me. Though I was also aging through this process and slowly gaining more and more perspective of the detrimental impact I was having on my friends and family. Unfortunately, one of the biggest aha moments I experienced, in retrospect is necessary, was when I flatlined for the second time. I went into cardiac arrest. I was almost 14, and I lost control of my body and my thoughts, and my heart stopped. It should never get to that point for anyone, but the aha moment hit me like a blow to my whole body, and I had to do something, because at that point it wasn't for me, but I saw, just seeing my mother sitting there in the hospital room, just crying her eyes out, just
Tears are good. Emotion.
yeah. Shows it matters. Thank you. I was not at the point yet where I was ready to dip my toes in the recovery pool for myself, so I made the decision to do it for my friends and family. I could not see them suffer anymore. But again, as a child, the only treatment available wasn't benefiting my recovery, and it was only making my thoughts and behaviors more fierce. I went round and round in the revolving door of acute inpatient treatment and pointless outpatient for another 2 years. Throughout this tiring pattern, I tried my absolute hardest to work on recovery on my own. I was able to do some work, and I saw some small changes within myself. I was able to focus on tasks, I would eagerly approach challenges, and I somehow found a way to start translating all the determination and energy I had put into being sick back into recovery. That development fueled my ability to further understand my actions. Unfortunately, as it goes, on this winding journey of milestones and setbacks, I lost myself again to the eating disorder. I was so frustrated, and I could not understand why my efforts weren't paying off. In my mind, I really felt like what I was doing was 100% recovery bound, and everything I was doing was toward being better. In retrospect, I can see that it was because I was trying to prove myself to other people. I wasn't doing it for myself, and I was still secretly rationalizing my decisions based on what behaviors and symptoms I could still belong to. I was in an inpatient facility for 4 months at that point, and the doctors were telling me that I had exhausted all the resources they had to offer. There was nowhere else I could turn, and eventually, after much insistence from my mother about finding an alternative intervention, the doctors and psychiatrists came up with the last and, to me, very daunting resort, was to send me to residential treatment in the US. Funded by OHIP, and that's another story. Problems with that. But it was at that point where I reached my second aha moment. Having to be sent to a different country, away from all of my supports, and really having to take recovery into my own hands. I weighed both sides of the way I was going to approach this treatment. I could either lie to myself and the treatment team, as I've been doing for years, or I could actually practice what I preached to other people suffering, and I chose the latter. As I was waving goodbye to my mother, as I was wheeled into the center in Florida, I could feel a crack growing in my heart. That crack grew to a fracture, and it was then and there that I realized that I always had the potential to get better. A foreign concept to me, but it was somehow enticing, because I wanted to get better. I wanted to sew that fracture shut, and instead of putting a Band-Aid on it and living with the pain, I decided to pursue. Being given the opportunity to push myself completely on my own, learning when to phone people, your support, you couldn't completely on yourself. It opened my eyes to a healthy reality within arm's reach. To me, recovery means the growth of perspective. I began to recognize the damage I was causing to myself and my loved ones. I saw that the damage to my body and my mind was real, and that the need to hold on to my eating disorder came to a point where I just wanted it gone. I wanted the thoughts to be gone and to be able to live my life without the impulses and obsessions. I looked for inspiration within people that had recovered, as well as people that have never even been exposed to an eating disorder, because the way that they approached eating and meals, especially in my culture, everything is based on food in the best way possible. And being surrounded by having it just be practice, so like being able to be like, okay, now we eat this, and then we eat this, and it's very normalized. It's not structured and like, you have to meet this, blah, blah, blah. It's something I wanted to do, to be back part of my family and my culture. I wanted all the things that I didn't want for so long. And I wanted my hunger cues back, and I didn't want to have to follow a refeeding protocol. I wanted to move forward in my life with the prospect of opportunities that I knew that wouldn't be available if I was still sick. I used to really want to be sick, because the behaviors and thoughts were comforting. I thought I finally had control over something in my life. In time, and through the small but meaningful milestones of brain fuel and exposure to the people with healthy behaviors, I decided I wanted to possess the ability to dissect my thoughts and commit myself to the introspection of what my desires were and where they were coming from. I came to the realization that in order to gain the control I was so adamant about, I had to let go of the behaviors I thought were helping me and defining me. I'm almost done, sorry. They were holding me back so much more than I thought. I'm now trying to make an effort on working on myself every day, focusing on my passions and rediscovering my identity. The genuine identity that was hidden beneath my eating disorder has been unearthed, and I'm excited to keep putting together and adding more pieces to the puzzle that I call myself. I truly believe that every person has the ability to be in recovery. I don't see it as an absolute, and I still experience thoughts that I'd rather not think. But now I have the strength and the resilience to fight those thoughts, because I know what it feels like to want what I experience today, which is acceptance. Acceptance of my life, acceptance of myself, and the celebration of my abilities and differences. And I fundamentally cannot let that go again. Hope comes from many unexpected places. Looking within yourself to find what it is that you're holding on to and challenging it can spark the strength you've always had.
I'm Sam. My eating disorder was it turned into a body image as I was in recovery, but the main, I guess, theme throughout my whole eating disorder and still kind of in recovery is control. So my kind of history with, I guess, mental illness / eating disorders started when I was probably about 6 or 7. Not necessarily eating disorder, but just that need for control. And as I guess I got older and moved through school, I came came out in various ways. I was probably about 12 or 13 when it started with restriction and exercise. Was first diagnosed when I was 14, was put into treatment and out several times. And I had a lot of what I look back on now, aha moments. At the time, nope. Hindsight's 2020. So I guess when I first started to really want recovery was one of the last times I was in treatment, and I finally opened myself up and actually made friends in treatment. Before that, I was always very closed, always very guarded, didn't participate in groups, didn't want to be there, definitely had some attitude issues, to say the least. So when I finally started to make friends, it was probably about 2021, and I made this really close group of friends, made day patient for the first time, got myself an apartment, started to live life, like actually just act like a 20-year-old, and all of a sudden it was like this switch, and I wish I could replicate it, and I wish I could tell you what happened so other people can have that switch flipped, but I really don't know what it was. Part of it was seeing these girls and just enjoying ourselves. Due to some medical issues, I didn't make it through that round of treatment, but they all did. And I got to watch them turn into these beautiful women, go to school, have relationships, build relationships that they've lost with family and friends, and I was like, I want that so badly. And I went into treatment again. I got in very quickly because it was 2 days before Christmas. Everyone else on the list said, nope, not going in right before Christmas. I don't care, put me in there. And that was really the start of, I guess, what got me here. That was about, I guess that was almost 6.5 years ago, something like that. Been in recovery since then, but it was definitely not easy. I was sick for about half of my life, and again, various treatment options and structures. Maudsley, again, it is wonderful for when you're diagnosed very young. When you get in there, it depends on the structure of your family and all of those things, and it's wonderful when it works out. I know women that it has worked for, and they got better and never back. I'm so happy for them, but one size does definitely not fit all. And yeah, again, hindsight's 2020, so it's like you look back on life and you're like, oh, that should have been a moment, and that should have been a moment, and what was I doing? And really, I think just like there's so many things that lead you to develop eating disorder, there are so many things that lead you to recovery and lead you to stay in recovery and make it worth it. And that's kind of, I guess.
What are some of those things? What have some of those things been for you?
Well, since being in recovery, I have a full-time job that I never thought was going to be possible. I'm engaged, and I moved up, live on a hobby farm. I'm very, very busy with that, and that helps, I think, because really, I don't know if this is for everyone, but most of the women and men that I've met with eating disorders, it's not just an eating disorder they struggle with, it's a concurrent disorder. I have many of them, I would say. I have OCD tendencies, PTSD tendencies, mega anxiety, the list goes on for me. I still deal with those every single day, and it sucks. And some days it doesn't suck. But really, you just have to, I guess, build supports, and you just learn to recognize thoughts, I guess. One of the biggest, I feel like I still remember it to this day, it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago. I was in treatment, and one of the doctors said, you know, if you could just turn your anger you have towards yourself which is what kind of fed my eating disorder, against the eating disorder. I wonder what would happen, and I live to that to this day. So I still have control in that way. There's certain rules that I have. I have not weighed myself in almost 5 years. I will never weigh myself because that would be my fault, I feel like. Maybe not, but nonetheless, not worth the risk. I have certain things that, one thing with eating disorder is the minute you restrict something and take something out of your diet, it's not going back in there. So the minute I notice that I'm not eating something or I'm thinking, oh, I can't have that, I'm going to go and eat it just because that's what my eating disorder is telling me to do. So that's not how I roll now, I guess. And I still deal with that, I guess, self-hate or self-resentment. I have a lot of resentment for myself and for what I put my family through, but I have more of it towards my eating disorder now. So I'm really thankful for, I'm going to shout out Dr. Woodside for giving me that piece of advice.
Hey, so I'm Sonia. So I was going into my 7th year living with my eating disorder, and I'd been in lots of inpatient, outpatient programs. I was on a cocktail of about 7 different types of medications, stuff to bring me down, stuff to bring me up. I was just kind of a mess. At this point, I wasn't totally consumed by my eating disorder, but it was always my constant companion and, of course, my ever-present enemy. So I had decided I'd made this decision to go back to university, and this was not what my parents wanted, and they were definitely right, because I could already feel that pressure building. So although there are many things that contributed to my recovery, there were so many small little aha moments, and as all of you guys have said, you look back on them and you later realize, that was a moment for me. And it was about, it was emotional, spiritual, psychological, et cetera, et cetera. There's one that really stands out for me, and I wanted to share that today. So it's actually, so I bought lunch that afternoon, and I was going to go sit on the park bench, and I was sort of gearing myself up for this battle that would happen when I unwrapped that sandwich. And instead I decided to pick up a book, which was called The Brain That Changes Itself. And it was actually a book that was recommended by my dad. And it's called The Brain That Changes Itself, Stories of Personal Triumph from the Frontiers of Brain Science. So I thought, okay, you know what, I'm just going to leave the sandwich alone for now, and I'm going to read this book. And I probably read 3/4 of the book that day. And I had come to this book to really find answers, because I'd done all the self-help stuff, I'd read CBT manuals, DBT manuals, all of that stuff, and I hadn't really found anything that really hit me or struck me. So, as these guys have also said, eating disorders aren't about food, not just about food, shape, size, body image, all of that stuff. It's about so much more. But somehow I couldn't quite make that leap, that intellectual leap from knowing that I just couldn't live with this terrible disorder to actually to recovering. And that was really frustrating, because I could do a lot of things really well, and I felt like my brain could do a lot of things, but I just couldn't do this one thing. And my parents are baffled by it too. They're just like, you're so capable. Why can't you just do this? So anyway, this book, basically what it describes is how our brains are incredibly flexible and malleable, even well into adulthood. So, and we can affect and we can basically change our brains mentally and physically. And so the sort of, it's sort of a technical book, but the way I'd like to describe it is riding a bike. So when you first get on a bike, it's awkward. You're thinking about the pedals, you're thinking about the handlebars, you're thinking about balance, all of that stuff. And that's generally why we fall over, because we're thinking about so many different things. But as you get better, your neurons fire faster and in a certain sequence. So you learn how to ride that bike, and it becomes something, in the book it's called a brain map. So you have a brain map for biking. So you get on your bike, and that brain map fires, and you're able to go and have fun and not think about it and not fall over. So I thought that was really interesting. I was like, okay, and there were stories about people who had suffered strokes, and they had retrained their brains and found ways to function again in life. So I thought, okay, so what if I think of this eating disorder as maladaptive way? I've gone through whatever I've gone through, PTSD, emotional issues, stress, all of that stuff. And the way I've dealt with it is my eating disorder. And that's become this, I've sort of reinforced that pattern so many times that it's become a map in my brain. So it's just like, immediately I go to my eating disorder if I feel stressed. And I think what a lot of people struggle with, and I know I really did, is that feeling like you don't have a choice. Like something happens, something triggers you, and before you know it, you're already there. Whether, whatever eating disorder behavior it is, you're already there. There's no choice. So I thought, okay, what if I tried retraining my brain? So suddenly that sandwich wasn't just a sandwich anymore. It was actually a step towards retraining my brain. And it became this incredibly positive thing. So I thought, I'll try this. It'll be a small step, but maybe if I eat the sandwich for lunch and I feel that sense of fullness, and then I can find a good coping mechanism that slowly I can start to train my brain how to eat properly again, and how to deal with stress properly again, and how to deal with family again, and how to do all of these things again. So, and that really worked for me. And I liked that approach because I had been given so many reasons. I had written down so many reasons why I had an eating disorder. And there's still probably millions out there that I have yet to discover. But I liked this. It took a lot of the blame away from me, and it took a lot of that judgment away, because shame was a big part of my eating disorder. Personally, shame was just still something that I struggle with a lot. So it began, and I started to sort of think of this as like a training session, and I really did like that. And so one of the things I would do is if I got really stressed out or there was a trigger or something, I would go do laundry. And I just practiced this over and over again. Even if I was just a little bit stressed, I would go do laundry. So I was always telling my parents, can you just please just like, any laundry, just do not do it, please, because I really need that laundry. So, and I just like trained myself over and over again until it became what I did. And that little space, that little choice that I got, that gave me enough time and space to actually have a choice. And that's where real true healing took root, is that little space in between. And then that space sort of grew, and it grew, and it grew, and I had more and more time to start thinking about other choices besides the eating disorder behaviors. So, and also what I also really liked about it was that it was science. It wasn't mysterious, it wasn't psychiatry, it wasn't diagnosis, it wasn't medication, it wasn't any of that stuff. It was just science. Retrain your brain. So I like that. So, and the other thing was that instead of jumping to recovery, I sort of changed my thinking. I thought, I'm an all or nothing person. So it was like, tomorrow I'm going to get better. And I'd wake up the next morning and I'd be like, yep, today is the day. I feel really good about this. And then before I knew it, I was just, on the floor feeling awful, and I was right back to where I was. So instead of that, I thought, okay, maybe instead of total recovery or total illness, I can move slowly towards that place of recovery and take small steps. So that was a big switch in my thinking. Yes, that was definitely an aha moment. So there's a lot more behavioral options that became available to me, and a lot more choices that became available to me after that. And so no amount of shaming, berating, yelling, fear, all of that stuff that I had been through. And I had been put in gowns, poked, prodded, weighed, whatever, everything. None of that had really helped. I mean, it was all part of the process, but ultimately it hadn't really helped. So really what my message is that it's the personal insights, and I think all of you guys have said that. It's the personal insights and the personal work that you do. So whether you're an inpatient or outpatient or whatever you're in, it's ultimately the personal work that you do and the personal insights that you gain from those places that really cause a shift. So what I really want to say is that search, research, find, expand yourself, no matter where you are in your illness, no matter how sick you feel, no matter where you are. Just tailor your own recovery. Find what works for you. Find that unique path and honor it. Because if you're in recovery and something doesn't work for you, it's okay. Try something else, or take it and modify it, change it. You're an individual, you're incredibly unique. And And once you find that something, pursue it, relentlessly pursue it, just keep going. Because ultimately it's your highest and truest self that's really going to tell you how you're going to feel. And I do believe in true and complete healing. So, and it also tells you how to express yourself in the world, and that's a big thing, is finding your voice. People with eating disorders are incredibly smart, and they're so insightful, they're so deep. I've had the privilege of knowing so many people. And no matter how painful, the eating disorder is telling you something, however dysfunctional that something is. So find bits and pieces that really call to you and honor that. Make it your own. Your natural self, which is you, how you existing beautifully in the world, when you really feel in sync, when you feel that sense of flow, like things are moving along. Even when things are difficult, you're still able to integrate it and sort of keep moving. That's what you really want to find. So relentlessly pursue that and create it for yourself, because ultimately that's what you do. You create your own path to recovery. And it's definitely so possible and so sweet, and it's waiting.
I don't know what to say. You guys won't know it. This is why I get up in the morning. I think you're wonderful at everything. And I hope the fact that it's being live streamed, that there are many people out there who have eating disorders in the dead of night who are on the internet trying to find something to listen to this, because you're very inspirational. We're going to ask some questions. Does the audience have anything that they'd like to say? Or yes? Yeah, stand up and ask your question or make a comment.
Two things, please. First of all, I have personal experience with those problems, and I don't have answers. I just like to thank you all so much for what you said, and congratulations to you for being so very strong. And I have a little question, please. If it's possible for each one of you, if there's time, I'd be very interested to know how valuable each of you found the support from your family and or friends or significant others in your lives, not just from medical people helping you, but from family. How helpful were they to you in your recovery? How important were they to you in your recovery? You can give an example or something like that. And thank you so much for your story. And good luck.
Well, I know for me, I said that even though it was really hard for my family to admit that I did have an eating disorder, they were there, my parents were there every single day in the hospital, like from the time like visitor hours started in the morning until they were pushed out the door at night. And even though it was very painful for them to acknowledge it because they didn't want their daughter to feel that way, it was hard for them to know that I was feeling so many different things. They were so important when I was in the hospital. It made it so, it was what I look forward to. I look forward to my mom and my dad coming in the morning, because it was that sense of familiarity when I was in a place where I was admitted like a drop of a hat, like I didn't expect being admitted. So especially in that circumstance, having that familiarity, having like people there for me that I knew loved me, made it so much better. And the kids at school, like I didn't really say like exactly what happened, why I was gone for 2 weeks all of a sudden. I told them it was my kidneys and that was that. But with my closest friends, like I was so scared to say that I was in the hospital for anorexia, because I had almost gotten this reputation in my group of friends for the one who doesn't eat. And even when we'd be sitting together at a party and everyone else would be having junk food, they'd ask me if I wanted some, but they already knew the answer. And I was so afraid because of that reputation, and when I finally was honest with them, they were so amazing. They would do their best to like help me become more comfortable around food without pushing me, even just like simple things at school, because they knew I struggled with drinking water before. They would ask like, hey Kelsey, like have you had enough to drink today? Like do you want us to like get you anything? Like really, really helpful without pushing, and it just, knowing that people around me cared made it so much better. And if it wasn't for them kind of being my encouragement, especially like on my darkest days, like when I was just having a rough day and wanting to go back so badly, even just like a small like smile or just like a little comment like that made it so much better. And I'm so grateful for my friends and my family.
Yeah, so everyone in my life knew, because it was like years and years and years, and my family can't keep their mouths shut. It's just a thing. Yeah, so all my friends knew. They didn't do anything. They would just call me maybe once a month and be like, hey, you out of the hospital yet? I couldn't use a phone, so they'd like, my mother would contact them, and they didn't really do anything. My mom and my sister and my mom's partner were integral. They fought tooth and nail with all of the doctors to try to make sure that, you know, the things that they were doing weren't going to actually damage me. And my boyfriend at the time, we were together for 3 years, and it was when I was a teenager, and he wasn't allowed to visit me in the hospital because he wasn't family. And he was my closest support, and I wasn't allowed that, though I knew I needed it. So I did have people supporting me, but I didn't get as much of it as I know I could have. But my mother was there. She had to quit her job to be with me all the time, and we had like zero money. My sister barely graduated high school because she was always with us. And yeah, I think, you know, I have an extreme amount of guilt about that. Like, and that'll last with me forever, but I think their support was it had a huge impact on, you know, me being alive.
So I have everyone who knew was great in their own way, but I have a few key people in my life. My dad was wonderful, my sister's wonderful, but hands down, my mom is the reason that I'm alive. I had some really crappy medical stuff happen, and I had extreme weakness and actually couldn't walk or lift my arms, and I refused to get a feeding tube. I pretty much gave up. My mom quit her job, and she came down every single day. She ate every single bite with me, and she is the only reason I am here. The only reason. My friend Kristen, as you were saying, you kind of modeled yourself off people who were infected by eating disorders. So I had my mom, my sister, my dad, my friend Kristen, who I tried to tell people not to come visit me. I didn't want a single soul to know I was sick. She didn't care. She's like, oh, too bad, I'm here. So what's going on? So I have her to thank, and just so many people were there for me. My partner now didn't know me at the time, but he helps me every single way he can. When I have a bad day, even though he doesn't understand, he's there to listen, and he's one of those people now, whenever I have a hard time, like, oh, I just feel disgusting, I shouldn't eat this, and he's like, oh, well, why not? And then he'll just grab some, and he's just great in his own way without knowing what he's doing.
Eating disorders don't make sense. So if it starts making sense to you, you're in as much trouble as I am.
Exactly.
Good news.
Exactly. So, yeah, everyone was wonderful who knew. I'm very private, so actually, the only people who know I had an illness were people who knew me at the time, minus my significant other now. I haven't actually really told a soul because I guess it's a shame. I'm embarrassed, and I feel like I'm not that person anymore, 100%. So I don't feel, I guess I don't feel like I need to bring it up. It's not relevant. So, I mean, if somebody knew and asked me about it, I would be honest. But it's just not relevant. I'm not that person, so it never comes up. I never bring it up. So, but the people who were in my life and who know I was sick, and they'll still check in and say, hey, how you doing? How's everything going? And that's really all I needed. But yeah, everyone was really helpful, 100%. Wouldn't have made it without them.
I think I really want to talk about my parents. My mom's a doctor, so for her it was, really devastating and very confusing. And my dad, also a doctor, was in India, and so we switched when he came here. But it was a struggle, really a struggle for them, and it was a struggle for me too. I was often really angry at them, and they were really angry at me. But we had such a close relationship, and that's what made it even harder. But I just could not have done it without them. And I'm so amazed that now they're so still willing to, give whatever they can to me. I got married 2 weeks ago, and and my significant other, he's similar. He doesn't get it, and that's wonderful. So it's so great. He didn't know me when I was really sick, so I'm sort of happy about that. But I think what I really would like to say is that parents, please get help for yourselves too, because it is not easy, and there is not very much help for parents. And I really feel the sense of compassion for people who have children that are going through this, because I can't even imagine the hell I put them through. Not intentionally, but nonetheless. So I really encourage parents to go and get help, for sure.
I think our next symposium that I end up doing is going to be lived experiences of parents whose daughters have, or children, people.
I just have a few from the internet. So, how can you get back on track once you've relapsed? Is there anything that helps?
Go do it. You're the expert.
So as I was saying, everyone's recovery is going to be different, so I'm not saying this will work for everyone, but I have rules for myself to stay healthy. One of my rules is every single slip I have either my best friend, my mom, or my boyfriend, or my sister. Right now it's basically been my mom and my significant other. Every time I have a slip, I have to tell them. And that ended my slips pretty quickly, because it's a rule, like I cannot break that rule. Every time you tell them, I have a slip, whatever that might be, the look in their face, or the shame you feel, or the guilt you feel, has gotten me back on track every single time. And I just have made it a rule, just like when you have an eating disorder and it's a rule not to eat this or this or this, it's a rule for myself that if I have a slip, I need to tell them. And it sucks because it's really embarrassing. And I guess that's kind of the point for me, because I don't want to hurt them, and I do. So that's how I kind of get myself back on track.
Yeah, it's definitely so important to kind of have a go-to plan. Once you do reach that sense of mental clarity at a certain point in your recovery, in case anything happens. So I know for me, I really like to write. So, for example, there was this one time when I was at a doctor's appointment for something completely unrelated, and I hadn't touched a scale in a while, and they're like, okay, we're going to weigh you now. And my heart just started pounding, and when I saw that number, it was a number that I was really afraid of reaching. And I did go home and I cried, and I am a bit of a crier, so just getting that out first before I start writing. And I just write down like what is it I'm feeling, like completely uncensored, like no holding myself back. I would go through and read it and like pick out things and like try to be as logical about it as I can be, which can be really hard like once you just like cry your eyes out. And go through like what could I do next time, like what would make this better, and just completely uncensored. And you don't even necessarily have to show it to anyone, just like even if you just read it over yourself and just like tuck it away, like, and just as long as you've gotten it out, because there's just so much once you hit a wall that you just need to like express somehow. And it can be very daunting to go to someone, and I applaud you for having that system in place. But just any way that you can get it out and just uncensored and just feelings everywhere.
I guess I fall back to my retraining or my training.
Go back to the book.
Yeah, and my laundry. But I also go back to my yoga mat. But I mean, of course, I caution people who have over-exercise issues. But for me, it's mainly just being on my mat and just being able to connect with myself spiritually, which is really nice. And my puppy is like a big part of my recovery. I know that is a big thing for a lot of people, is pets. So I encourage you to go get a pet.
I did have another one, if I may. How do you convince yourself that recovery is worth it when symptoms have been the coping mechanism that have served purpose for a number of years? So I guess that's part of the aha moments.
Yeah, and in fact, that's a good thing to pose, because it's actually one of the questions. When you had this moment, what was going on? Why did it happen? How did you respond to it? Why now? Why so many other times before it didn't move you, but this time it got you going? So go through it.
Well, I think for me, I really wanted to finish university, and my parents had said absolutely not. Like, this is what's causing your stress, and they said, if you want to do it, you pay your way through it. So as I felt myself getting sick again, I thought, I really want this. I really, really want it. So that was sort of so the way I think of it is that if you have even just one little positive thing, one reason to get better, then start to put that into place, write it down somewhere, say it, tell someone. And then slowly what will happen, you'll find over time, is that there'll be more and more reasons for you to get better. And it's like I was telling my friend Danielle, who is also recovered, that it's like I said it's like a scale, that more and more weights get added to one side, and eventually there's this tipping point when you're like, no, now I want to recover. But she said, Sonia, no, don't use the scale metaphor, like think of something different. I haven't quite thought of a different one. Maybe it's more like a spectrum, but you get more and more reasons to want to get better, and it's like a buffer between you and relapse, and that going back to that eating disorder again. So being able to try to just cultivate more and more positive things, just trying to bring those positive things into your life, like just even coming here tonight, if this was a positive thing for you, then this is a step towards recovery.
Right, I know for me, school was so important. Like, I wasn't even halfway through high school yet when I was hospitalized, but just like the distress of originally that one appointment put me on edge of missing the entirety of school, so like let alone being away from school for 2 weeks, it just really put a lot into perspective that I thought that I was doing something so right for my body, but I wasn't. I was keeping myself from my passions, from essentially living the life that I could have. And like you said, like you just find more and more reasons as you go to recover, like especially once you get a better sense of mental clarity, there's more things that you want to do. Like I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do with my life at that point, but as I kept going and I was feeling so much better, just like physically, emotionally, and getting in a better place, and like thinking of honoring myself as a person and not treating myself and like constantly punishing myself for like my perspective failures that I made up for myself. And it kind of just, it's a domino effect, and it's not a clean like aha moment. There's like so many along the way, as we've been saying for the past little bit. But just finding something that brings you joy. And the eating disorder, like when you're on that awkward cusp, you begin to realize that it's not okay, it's not fun, it's actually quite distressing. And I think a lot of people think the stereotypical eating disorder patient is someone who clearly wants this and wants to keep going with this, but there is that level of distress, and you know you want to push past that. And just, again, like finding the reasons to push past that. And no, I didn't have a clean route that I had at that point, but it's funny how something that I thought was so terrible, being hospitalized for anorexia and like having an eating disorder and like experiencing all this, ended up shaping my life in such an important way where I'm now on the path to helping others who went through the same thing. And it's interesting once you allow yourself to listen to yourself and not the disorder, like what you can uncover and like what direction you can go.
I think so. The question was, when you relapse, with
Yes, how do you convince yourself that it's worth it, when the symptoms are what you used to?
I think when you're dealing with a multitude of things and it's under the wide umbrella of eating disorder, and you start leaning toward one behavior because you're thinking, oh, well, you know, if I take away this, I still have this, so I can focus on this one. And then if someone's realizing I'm doing this, I can fall back on this one, blah, blah, blah. I think it's important to try to, I mean, and not like you have to be at that point, but I think looking into what each one of those behaviors, like that behavior and symptom, what are you attached to it? Like what part of it do you feel like you're benefiting from? Because often you can find things, and then it you know, it opens up your mind. If you're looking at a certain symptom and you're saying, oh, because, you know, it could be because I have a need for control, or I'm trying to compensate for my thinking that I'm like my inability to do this for school, things like that. Like I never cared about school. I did really well, but I just don't care about school. And so for me, it was because I didn't have that focus on one thing. I was leaning more toward those behaviors, but then within those behaviors, I could find out why I was so passionate about being sick, right? So that passion I could translate into something that gave me the same satisfaction, but wasn't to my detriment. Yeah, so I think just dissect it. Like, what do you think you're benefiting from that? And then how do you think you can go forward with putting that into recovery? So.
Patty, sorry, I have one more from, okay. And then I'll shut up and everyone else. This is really, I think, an important one. This is from a mother. My daughter has anorexia and has completely shut us out of her life. Do you have any advice? How can we reach her?
I want to say parents belong in your life. Are you going to allow your child to say, get out of my life, cutting you out? They are more than their eating disorder. You have to be able to go to her or him and say, I love you, I want to be with you, I want you with us. That doesn't fly. Your eating disorder is there, but you're a human being. You're my child, and yes. You stand up, please, and yes.
Thank you. I'm not passionate, but the experience I've had with anorexia, I would want to suggest it depends on what stage you're at with anorexia, because being malnourished leads to what you call irrational thinking. And so a lot, please correct me, because you are expert, that once you reach a certain stage with BMI or low weight or whatever, it's simply no longer possible to argue and be rational. when somebody's shut out of their life, the priorities of them to do whatever malnourishment.
And that's a very good point. One of my theories with all of this is, with all of these women, they were in treatment, they got force fed, they refed, left, they ate their way out of the hospital, and they relapsed. The years of starvation that starved their brain, in 4 months you put on whatever amount of weight. But we re-nourish that brain. Come out of the hospital, you undereat, you start losing the weight, but just because the numbers are going down, I'm beginning to think that that brain has still got some nourishment. Thus, when you hit bottom, and one of the things about hitting bottom is very dangerous, there's always a lower point. So don't ever say, oh, we're waiting for her to hit bottom, and then bottom keeps getting lower and lower. But I think that when you've been through the refeeding, and you come out and you relapse, and even if you go back in again, and you get refed and you come out, there's something going on in the brain. You can function a little better. We know that a starved brain cannot make any decisions. There's a study going on at CAMH where they're looking at individuals with eating disorders or who had eating disorders and their sisters' brains. Wendy, do you want to say a bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know. This is Dr. Celine. We've actually got the study on the table. There's a study going on at CAMH where they are looking at two sisters. Why does one have an eating disorder and why does one not? And my daughters both went. So they're looking at what is making one brain more vulnerable than the other. And the older one does not have an eating disorder, and she went, and Amy went. And it was shocking, absolutely shocking what we saw of Amy's brain. The older one, her brain should look a little bit worse because she's 37 and Amy's 31. But the researcher actually met with us and told us that Amy's brain is catastrophically worse than Laura's brain. And we've got black and white images to show. And that's actually what I just showed when we were in Ottawa in April. I showed it to every MP that we met with. This is my child's brain. How is she supposed to make any decisions? Because what has happened is her tissue and cells have died and it's been replaced with cerebrospinal fluid. So there are black blocks, huge areas that are fluid. And unless she gets refed, and we told this to Amy's face, that unless you are going to eat and get refed, it's not going to happen. It's the only way. And so now I come to believe, because I know Dr. Inside has already said, you have to get refed, and that's absolutely the truth.
And so my theory is that even with this relapse, the fact that you had been renourished once, you still got something that's helping that brain to work. And as you notice with everybody's story, when there has been a relapse, there's been a very functional sense of looking at themselves and saying, what's going on? Why did this? It's you become much more introspective, and it's not the doctor saying, "Now, what do you think your eating disorder is saying to you?" There's a real, and I think that arriving at that place and that seed of wisdom, and then starting to work with it, whether it's your book, being in hospital, whatever it is. We have on the back.
I think it's kind of, we should probably speak to the parent question.
Yeah, okay.
Because I don't think that was
Okay.
actually.
Go ahead.
So in regards to what can the mom do, I kind of went through that with my amazing mother, but at one point in my eating disorder, I shut everyone out. And so I found what they did exactly what Patty was saying is you have to speak to, I was still a person, I was still their daughter, So instead of every time we got together we would talk, instead of what are you having for snack? How was program today? Blah, 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 whatever. It was, what movie do you want to see? Oh, did you see this new TV show I saw? Completely not ignored the eating disorder, but she gave me space. They all gave me space. My sister, my dad, they all did it. So rather than always talking about my eating disorder and always focusing on that, they started focusing on the other pieces of who I was, what kind of TV shows I liked, anything else that I was really interested in. They put the focus on that, and then I started, to trust them again, because when you're in that brain fog, you think everyone is against you, and it almost got me thinking like, okay, no, they don't want to talk about my eating disorder, they want to know like how I'm actually doing, what my favorite course was, what did I learn today in chemistry, whatever it was. That's what allowed them kind of back in it, helped break down those walls, because I didn't have my guard up, assuming they were going to attack me with my eating disorder again. I dropped that guard, and it was focused on me as a person, and they came right back into my life, and I mean, not right back in, like it was a walk in the park. It definitely took a long time, but it was just focusing on the other parts of me. That's what my family kind of did, and that eventually led to me to have them back in my life and open up to them and start talking to them again.
Yes, doesn't that speak to the fact that you had said you all agree that the parents need to have help as well?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
you totally need to have coping skills, because when you just as a teenager, or I had this with my granddaughter who is 9, and I can't speak to her, right? So you need to have those skills, and you need to have the strength, and you need to be able to work as partners, right? Even if it is the husband, whoever it is that's going to help, they need to have those skills.
I totally agree, because I can't imagine that fear. So to try to approach your child, and for my parents to try to approach me on a personal level, and not talk about my eating disorder, which is also really important. I really needed them not to do that all the time, because I would not trust them and I would just push them out. But my parents really needed a way to talk about it. They needed someone to talk to, because they were so frightened. They were scared to death. So so I really think that the best way is for them to get help, and then approach me in a way that was less punitive and less. My mom was really angry and my dad was really scared. So once they stopped approaching me like that, then I was able to open up to them a lot more and trust them and let them back in. But that only happened after they got help. And it's so strange that there's not help available. I mean, parents are shut out a lot of the time. They're like, okay, you guys have to leave now. They're for inpatient. They're like, okay, gotta go.
As an adult.
And often, I walk into the room and it's like, and we're reading books about toxic parents. Why? This constant blame on parents is just.
Because I think it's also, when it first happens, when the recognition of the eating disorder, parents are often going in blind, right? A lot of people.
They are.
Yeah, because people don't know about eating disorders until it's part of their life. That's just what it is right now, which is really unfortunate, but it's true. And so, to imagine being the person, it may not even be parent. A lot of people don't have parents going supporting them through it. But to be that person who is supportive and just completely lost when it comes to their loved one that is sick, that is dying, and not knowing what to do and not being given any outlet. That's terrifying. And I think for a parent, for a supportive person to be able to go in and reach out to the person that they care about, they need to be given resources of how to do it, how to tailor it to who that person really is, but be able to learn how to approach it rather than going in and then having that person be defensive or things like that. Having it actually work as a team. It's
Right. My parents were always really like tried to honor my independence and the fact that I was also a human being as well. And that's just how I was raised. They always wanted me to speak my mind, and like when I got to this brain fog right before I went to the hospital especially, it was so hard for them because I was saying these things that I didn't really mean because I was just angry. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the disorder. I was angry that I was doing all these things that just seemed so out of my control. And they tried to like help me and accommodate me like at the beginning when they were like, okay, you don't think you need the appointment right now, we won't go through with it right now. But once they saw that I was getting worse and that I just kept losing more and more control to the brain fog and like the disordered thinking, that's when they knew, as their child, they know me best, and they knew that I was at that point where they needed to step in as parents, no matter how painful it was, because I know it was so hard for them on the day of my appointment, seeing me cry and not want to go, but they knew that I needed help, and it was really hard, and as a parent, I can't imagine, it must be horrifying, like, my dad, because he was actually at work, and it was my mom who took me, getting that call that they were admitting me, and there does need to be so much more support for parents, because as much as it's hard to be put in the hospital yourself, just the confusion of your daughter who was this good student and never did anything wrong, like, and all of a sudden this is all spiraling out of control, like, it's so scary to reach out because you've never had that experience before with your child. But as I said, as a parent, if you know your child best, and if you have the feeling in your gut, go with your intuition, if you think they're at that point where they are unable to think clearly enough to make that decision for themselves, you need to get them help as far as it may be.
Somebody, yes.
I just wanted to address what you said about the relapse, that I agree completely. When my daughter went into treatment, I think in our first family therapy session, they were just letting us know about 45% relapse rate, and I was like, what are they saying? She's not even out, she's not even in bed. Why are they saying this? Because I really didn't even think about that. And she did relapse very badly, very hard. She ended up sicker probably than the first time, but stuff went in because she was eating, involuntarily, but eating, and she was there for 6 months. And the second time around, I never thought I'd say it, but relapse for her was a gift because now she was on her terms, outside, learning everything that went wrong and that needed to be done differently. And it's 2 years later, and thank God she's doing very well. It was much slower, but that makes sense. I don't think many of you, I know my daughter, most people don't go into treatment with a big smile because it was their idea. Right?
No.
We cry and we beg and we push and we threaten and no school and all the other stuff, and if we're lucky, they go into treatment, but they don't go in with a big smile because they don't want to be there. So that's the beginning of the journey, and then we have to figure out when they relapse, because most do. I think it's probably more than 45%, but then you have to figure out how to do it on your terms and with your supports. So relapse is not a 4-letter word. I thought it was, and I hated it when it was happening, but it was just the next step of recovery, I think.
Good for your daughter.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have a question on, I have a 13-year-old daughter. This is her 7th hospital admission in Madison. The diagnosis was 10. It sounds like all of you have experienced some sort of need at an early age. Looking back when you were sort of 10, 11, early teens, did you recognize anything? Was there anything that could have been done differently to have changed your track?
Good question. Very good question.
Obviously, we're in the way daughter has every treatment.
Can we prevent the relapses?
She's been inpatient for 6 weeks at a time. She's currently at St. Kitts. She's in her 4th week again. And this is her 7th week.
So
13 years old. Started when she was 10.
So
One
thing
time, I didn't realize it was helpful, but I started looking, before I was in recovery, started looking back at this person. I was set up with kind of a mentor, which is a very difficult thing for me. I often remember you run into people that are like, why don't eating disorders have sponsors like any other addiction? Things are different. I feel like it's a very slippery slope. But I was lucky enough to have someone who had gone through a similar experience. And again, at the time, I was probably about 15 when I got set up with her. And at the time, I don't think I appreciated it as much, but as I got older, once I hit 16, 17, 18, she was probably not much older, but she was probably about 10, maybe a little more than 10 years older than me. Started looking at her and thinking like, she's incredible. Like, look at this life she has. Like, and that was again one of those moments, just like watching the girls move on and start to have lives. I started looking at her and being like, I want to be just like her. She's so strong. And I started actually looking at recovery as strength rather than a weakness, which I think is a lot of, I can't speak for your daughter, but when I started my eating disorder, especially at that age, it was about strength. I thought, if I can control what I eat, if I can control what I put into my body, I'm strong. I'm not saying that's true for everybody, but that's what kind of impeded, I think, my getting well, is that I view my eating disorder as strength. So why would I give up this strength that I have? But then because of her and the life she had, and I got to see everything she was going through and everything she was building, and she had a partner and she was so happy and so vibrant, like such a vibrant woman. I still talk to her to this day. I feel like I started viewing her as strength. So it was that piece for me that I think started to kind of get everything in motion. So that's one thing that I was, at that age, I was introduced to that I feel like was helpful, even though I may not have realized it at the time, it really was very helpful.
I think in early childhood, I have had lots of experiences as a kid, like 15 ambitions there. When I was a young kid, like pre-teen, I think what was difficult is that, well, a lot of treatment is mainly targeted for like 14 to 25, which is really difficult because it's obviously people are still suffering that aren't those ages. It's just kind of the expectancy of the recognition doesn't come like within the medical field. People aren't recognizing it until you're a teen. And I think I don't know what environment your daughter is in, because it also depends on, there's age, there's school, there's a lot of things. But I think like when I was like 10, 11, and like, relapse when you're 11 is very different from when you're relapsing when you're 18. And it's really difficult because the parent role is very stressed. And yeah, I think, having mentors and stuff is just not emphasized. And it's very hard to find. But I think, finding organizations, finding things that will support, especially like, I don't know if there's actual things like that for children with eating disorders, I think is something that's not widely recognized, which is really unfortunate because there are children sick every day, there are children dying of eating disorders. But I think what really helped me when I was like 10, 11, 12 was I had a much stronger, like I thought that eventually I would get better. When I got older, I didn't even think of that. I was like, this is me here right now, I don't care about anything else. But there's still the idea of like when I grow up, And you kind of lose that when you get older, even if you don't have an eating disorder. But yeah, childhood, you know, like 10, 11, 12, you're still like, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. And then I think telling your child things like that and like, well, in order to do this, you need to be better. You need to figure out a way that this isn't a part of your life anymore. We need to figure out a way that this isn't a part of your life anymore. Yeah, I think it's very difficult, especially, you know, as a child of revolving doors, right? The amount of, and then it becomes, we're used to it, which is so uncomfortable. Like it's awful to experience that. Yeah, but I think just really recognizing that, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but like all the points I've made just run with that.
Yes?
Yeah, I wanted to add on to like
Can you stand up?
So I've been in sick kids a few times as well. And it was from a young age, since the first time when I was 8. And I think one thing that I really wish my family had known and I had learned at the time is that well, first of all, I wouldn't call it relapsing or conflict relapsing because I never got better. It was making my weight go up. But in my head, I was still just as sick. I wish somebody had been there to tell us that it's not your fault. If you're not doing something wrong, it's not like there's some weird outlier. That's kind of the norm, is that it's not working. The current system is not working for people. I mean, yes, you need to eat and you need to nourish yourself, but the thing is it can be done in so much of a less traumatic way. So I think, like, don't give up hope. Don't let them convince you that it's because you're doing it wrong. It's the system that's broken, and there is hope. Yeah, like I don't know, that's just kind of something.
Right? Like it's not something that you can do wrong. Like it's the brain. It's
I think, yeah, like yourself as the individual can just get so lost in treatment because it's always focused on refeeding, doing this and that. But I think a lot of my issue was, especially at the age your daughter was I didn't honor myself as an individual. I always felt that I had to impress other people, and giving into my disorder and like continuing to go with it like kind of gave me that. I almost felt superior at times to other people, especially at that headstrong age when I'm discovering who I am because I was doing this. But at the same time, I was also heavily involved in theater, and I felt worthy there, and it was a place where I could detach myself from my disorder for a bit and like what was going on in my head, and I could be completely someone else, and I would get praised for this, and it was completely unrelated to like what was going on in my head. So even if like mentoring is great and it's awesome, but even if your daughter finds something she's really passionate about that she can forget about her disorder, like even for a little bit, just like on a weekend, like so it's not always the forefront of everything and not it can not be the elephant in the room all the time. Just like finding something that she really loves as well. Like of course you can do mentoring too, like that's really, really important that there's that support there for her. But encouraging her to grow as an individual aside from the eating disorder, aside from what's going on in her head, and just finding herself so she can create a life beyond that, and it makes it more attainable to recover when there's something else there for you and you can clearly see that, and not just what's going on in your head and what the disorder is in like treatment in the hospital.
A lot of these women up here have gone on to do a whole lot of interesting things. So I'd like to have them share just a bit about what's going on in their life.
So as I said before, like when we started, I'm currently a student at Master University. So I'm in psychology, neuroscience, and behavior. And this past year was my first year of university, and September I was looking around, like I really want to get involved, but like I wasn't really sure how because it was kind of daunting, like all these things in front of me. And I was walking through campus one day and I saw this poster and it said, spread your wings on the TEDx stage, and I'm like, oh, I really like drama, like throughout like elementary school and high school. Like maybe this is something I could do, like kind of combine two passions of mine. And the past year in grade 12, I actually did a presentation at my school about my disorder and my experience. And I thought, you know, I got really good praise from that, so maybe I should send an audition tape. So I did, and I wasn't extremely confident because I was only my first year, and I thought, you know, like the upperclassmen and like the graduate students, they're probably gonna get the spots. But I kept going further and further in the audition process, and I kept getting more and more confident. And I was actually chosen to be one of the 4 student speakers at the McMaster TEDx conference back in February. I was given the opportunity to share my story in a 15-minute format. The link is actually on the back of the question sheet. It's the first cut. In the coming months, there should be the finalized edition on the TEDx YouTube page, but this is just the private link of the full, like, almost like raw footage, but it's there.
Not so raw.
Yeah. And it was really funny because I thought after my disorder that I wouldn't be able to go back and like do theater because it was such like an appearance-based thing, and that kind of made me nervous. But the fact that I could combine like these 2 things in my life, like one that I thought was absolutely horrible and would never do anything like substantial for me, like in the long run, and the other that was such like a passion of mine, and they kind of like came together and like in a really amazing way, and like gave me this amazing opportunity to share my story with others, because it's so important for me to get that out there, especially because like Patty was saying, we don't have a lot of like lived experiences, and we haven't heard much from like people who've experienced eating disorder or their parents. And it's so important for me to get that message out there, because I'd rather someone hear straight up the facts rather than all this like fluff that can kind of like go around on the internet, because it's great that we're talking about it more, but there's a lot that gets kind of lost, like almost romanticized like on the internet, because it's so easy and accessible, and we kind of don't get all the information that we need, especially if you're someone who's never been exposed to an eating disorder before, like in terms of like anyone close to you. So it's just so important for me, and I'm so honored to be here as well and continuing to do what I love to do.
Yeah, so I graduated from this kind of weird school a couple years ago. Very small. It's an LGBTQ alternative school. And in light of Pride and everything that's going on, I'm very, very close with them. We do a lot of advocacy around. It's Canada's only LGBTQ school, because it's kind of whatever. But it reaches out to youth that often, unfortunately, have had horrible experiences within high school. So they come to this school after something happened in their mainstream school, and I don't think that should be a reality. We've had one person that's come straight from middle school so far. And there's a lot of it's called the Triangle Program. Within that school, there are a lot of people dealing with mental health problems. There's often, because struggling with identity, struggling with gender identity, with sexual identity, things like that, there can be a lot of confliction. So working with that, I do a lot of presentations and things like that, dealing with coping strategies, things like that. And I volunteered for Distress Centers Toronto, which is a suicide hotline. There's 2. There's one that people they call in if they need somebody to talk to. A lot of people live alone, and we don't know about them because they live alone. And people need people. So I was that person. It's pretty cool. And I finished my first year of early childhood education. And I'm going on to major in deaf studies and ASL. I hate school. But
passion.
I'm doing it because I have to do something I love. Doing collaborations with these musicians and artists, visual artists, and we're kind of putting together this show for this company. So I get to do a mural for that, which is really cool.
Not doing anything cool like that.
You've been speaking out for 6 years now?
Okay, so I've done a couple of these talks. Other than that, I now live up in Woodville, which is a really, really small town. I live there with my fiance. I'm a really giddy girl. Okay, and basically we're just like, we have a hobby farm. We have, so we have about 20 cows, give or take. We have ducks, we have cats, we have chickens, we have 3 dogs. So we're really busy, which I like. And I'm just trying to, I'm very, as I said, I suffer with anxiety and a lot of stuff, so I need a lot of animals. So right now we have baby ducks, and they're kind of, I guess I'm mama duck. And I'm being signaled or something. They're trying to tell me.
No, because you don't even speak about this stuff.
More than that. She's a registered massage therapist.
Okay, yeah.
She's traveled the world.
No, I haven't traveled the world. I'm big into traveling, which is a dream I had when I was really sick, always. So I've got to travel. I went for 7 weeks last year on my own. Had a ton of aha moments because I actually came home from my trip and my mom's like, so like, what was the food like? And I was like, good. And I hadn't thought about it. Like, I just ate everything. That you just go, and I think I went to 18 different countries, and I had something from every single country, and I don't even remember, they all just kind of drive together, but,
You weren't there for the food.
no, I wasn't there for the food, but I didn't, it's like, you don't even think about it, I guess. Like, I did, because it was, like, new, and it was either really good or, like, not so great. I've done the haggis thing, and I'm good to not do it again. Yeah, I've traveled. I'm a massage therapist. I'm now also working. I do. It's like it's not. It's almost like I'm doing physiotherapy assisting. I do one-on-one in pools, so the therapist will tell me what they need to work on, and then I do one-on-one, and I rehab people for knee surgeries or spinal injuries or neurological conditions. And yeah, that's kind of what I do.
So I just finished my master's in economics, and I realized that while I was writing my thesis, on the side I was scribbling down all these notes for sort of a more integrative, holistic therapy for people suffering from eating disorders. So a friend of mine who also recovered, we founded a program called Choose a Happy Life. And basically it's a model where we believe that you start from I am, and you learn about yourself. And then you move to I can, where it's more of a sort of a step of action. And then you move to I feel, where you address your emotions. And I love, which is your family and all your friends. This is a very simplistic explanation of the model. Then you move to I think, your thoughts. And then at this point, we're hoping that you're doing well, you're doing better, and you move to a phase called I know. And then from I know, you move to the last stage, which is I am, except this time, the I am is in big letters. So it all comes back around again. So we have this integrative model, and basically what it is it's designed to empower you and to help you discover your natural self and your natural abilities. So what we've taken, my friend Danielle and I, what we've taken is the tools that have worked best for us from DBT, CBT, yoga, meditation, Eastern philosophy, what have you. We've put it all together, and we're offering these tools to people and allowing them to find what works for them and then modify it and try it. And it's very individual. It'll look we're running our first workshop on August 14th, and it's in Hamilton, and then we're running a retreat, 2-day retreat in Dunville, which is a beautiful little town. So we're doing that, which is really exciting, and in summer I'm headed to Japan, and I'll be teaching there as well. So yeah, so that's really exciting.
Website and the Happy Life is on the back of your paper. The link to the TED Talk is there. The book, there's 2 different titles, 2 different books. The Brain That Changes Itself, Stories of Personal Triumph, and The Brain's Way of Healing, Remarkable Discoveries and Recoveries from the Frontiers of Neuroplasticity. Also, there were 2 books that I got into while all this was going on, and they were by Brene Brown. You may know her. One of them is her latest one, Rising Strong, and her one just before that is Daring Greatly. And for people that are needing to leap forward, her Rising Strong and Daring Greatly is very, very good. So that's also as well as on here. So I would like to say thank you from the bottom of our NIED heart, and I'm so impressed with all of you. And as you grow and go out and save lives, if I can do anything for you, please call me. I'm an old lady now, but I'm so excited to see everything that you're doing, and I really appreciate your openness, your honesty, your forthrightness, and as everybody has said, we need to talk more about this. So thank you. And thank you. I'd also like to thank NEDIC, who is the resource center across Canada, and in case you needed any information, they're the people to come to. They have very kindly donated their time and have partnered with us so that we can actually do this as a webinar or live streaming. I don't know. I'm like one of those old people that but so now, so many more people can be reached, and we really thank you for that. And yes, thanking and taking the time. I'd also like to thank Temple Sinai for providing space, and for Lauren and Barbara Bernstein for their contribution and for supporting me. There are certain things that we're doing right now, and you may have seen this. But one of the things that we found that is really helpful, if you're talking about theater and things like that, is knitting. And one of our social media guru had a knitting disorder, and she found that knitting really helped her. And she has taken it on herself to create Hand Knit Hope, which is craft people or people who don't know how to knit or how to, any knitting groups to actually knit scarves and toques and things for people with eating disorders. And we will give them to people with eating disorders as a big hug and a big embrace. And so we're suggesting that you may want to make a basket like this and take it to your doctor's office where people actually just sit and wait. And Wendy actually has been wonderful and
starting off the rows, because I don't know how to do this. So that's one of the things that you can see on the website if you know of any knitting groups. And we've already got this across Canada. There's a group in Victoria, in BC, that's starting it as well. What else did I say? We have a donation box. Where is it? At that. Yes. We haven't had a donation box before, but we do have one now, and every little bit helps. So if you feel comfortable, that would be great. We would have given you an evaluation sheet because we want to know what it is that will help you and support you. And so if you have any comments, we can incorporate that into our symposium schedule for next year. And
also the mailing list.
Yes, if you'd like to be part. Yeah. So we have a newsletter that we do monthly, and if you'd like to participate in that or receive it, please just fill it out and print it so that we can actually read it. That would be helpful. And thank you all very much for coming.
Can I just say one last thing? I'm not going to have the last word. We put some studies at the back. I got contacted from somebody from England. Like, it's amazing how many people listen at us. And participating in a study is really a critical thing for research. So if there's anything on the back table that you want, the great research that I was talking about, something that you want, take whatever you want.